Stand in a French village in May 1315 and watch the rain fall. It's been raining for weeks, not the gentle spring showers that water crops, but relentless, driving rain that turns fields into swamps and washes seeds from the soil. The sky is a perpetual gray. The sun hasn't appeared in so long that people are beginning to forget what it looks like. This is the beginning of the Great Famine, and it will kill millions. For 3 years, rain will fall almost constantly across northern Europe. Crops will fail. Livestock will die. People will starve in numbers not seen for centuries. Prices will skyrocket. Social order will collapse. Parents will abandon children they cannot feed. Crime will explode. Cannibalism will occur. This isn't ancient history or prehistory. This is 14th century Europe, supposedly civilized, supposedly Christian, with functioning governments and trade networks. Yet the weather will break it all, exposing how fragile medieval prosperity really was. Today, advanced AI technology allows us to transform contemporary chronicles, harvest records, and archaeological evidence into photorealistic recreations, bringing this catastrophic collapse back to life. Join me as we experience the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, discovering how the rain destroyed Europe's food supply, understanding how people tried and failed to survive, and witnessing what happens when an entire continent's agricultural system collapses simultaneously. Spring 1315. The rain begins. Walk through the countryside of northern France, Belgium, England, or Germany in early May 1315 and immediately sense something wrong. The spring planting should be finished by now, but the fields are underwater. The rain that began in April continues without stopping. The soil, saturated beyond capacity, becomes mud thick as porridge. Farmers attempt to plow, but oxen sink to their knees. Seeds broadcast onto the sodden earth either wash away or rot before germinating. Look at the farmers' faces, worry mixed with confusion. Rain delays happen occasionally, but this is unprecedented. Week after week of continuous rain, the fields remain too wet to work. The planting season is passing. Every day of delay reduces the eventual harvest, but there's nothing to do except wait for weather that won't improve. Listen to the constant drumming of rain on thatch roofs, the drip of water through leaks, the squelch of mud underfoot. Everything is damp. Clothes never dry. Fires struggle to stay lit with wet wood. The cold is penetrating. This should be warming spring, but temperatures remain near winter levels. Something has changed in the climate itself, though no one understands what. The medieval warm period, 3 centuries of relatively stable, warm weather that allowed population expansion, agricultural intensification, and economic growth, is ending. The Little Ice Age is beginning, bringing colder temperatures, unpredictable weather, and shorter growing seasons. But the people living through 1315 don't know they're witnessing climate change. They just know it won't stop raining. Summer 1315, failed harvest. June arrives with more rain. July brings rain. August, harvest time, brings rain. Walk into the fields and witness disaster. The wheat stands in water, stalks rotted, grain moldy and inedible. The barley has produced almost nothing. What grain exists is diseased, infected with ergot, a fungal disease that makes grain poisonous, causing madness, convulsions, and death when eaten. Watch farmers cutting what little crop survived, their faces reflecting desperation. A normal harvest yields 6 to 8 times the seed planted. This year's harvest, in many regions, is barely twice the seed. After saving seed for next year's planting and paying feudal obligations, there's almost nothing left to eat. The hay harvest also fails. The grass, waterlogged and moldy, can't be dried properly. Livestock need hay to survive winter. Without adequate fodder, animals will starve. Farmers face terrible choices. Slaughter animals now while they still have some meat on them, or try keeping them alive through winter on insufficient feed, risking losing everything. Look at the price records. Grain prices begin rising in late summer. Wheat that cost 5 shillings per quarter in 1314 now costs 8 shillings. By autumn, it will reach 15 shillings. By spring 1316, it will hit 40 shillings, 8 times the normal price. The poor, who spend 80% of their income on food in good times, are priced out of the market immediately. Starvation begins before winter arrives. Autumn 1315, the hunger begins. October 1315, and the reality becomes clear. There isn't enough food. Walk through a market town and see the desperation. Bakers display small, expensive loaves. What bread exists is adulterated with sawdust, ground acorns, even clay to stretch scarce flour. The bread tastes terrible and provides minimal nutrition, but it's all available. Watch people's faces grow thinner. The well-fed look of summer disappears, replaced by sunken cheeks and hollow eyes. The poorest begin showing signs of starvation, swollen bellies, from edema, skin diseases, listlessness. Children are worst affected. Without adequate nutrition, they weaken rapidly. The wealthy hoard grain, driving prices higher. Merchants speculate, buying grain to sell later at inflated prices. The King of England attempts price controls, forbidding sale above certain prices. It fails completely. Grain simply disappears from legal markets, sold secretly at whatever prices buyers will pay. Government intervention proves powerless against supply and demand. Crime explodes. Bread theft becomes epidemic, punishable by hanging, yet desperate people risk it. Robbery increases as starving people turn to violence. Murder for food occurs. Social bonds fray under hunger's pressure. The chronicler John of Trocoloe writes that men ate dogs, cats, the dung of doves, and even their own children. Winter, 1315 to 1316. Dying in the cold, stand in a peasant village in January 1316 and witness collapse. The food ran out weeks ago. People eat anything, bark stripped from trees and boiled, grass, roots dug from frozen earth, even leather boiled until it's soft enough to chew. These provide no real nutrition. They just fill stomachs temporarily, delaying death. Look inside a peasant cottage and see the reality of famine. A family that numbered 7 in autumn now has 5. The youngest child died in November, an elderly grandparent in December. The survivors lie on straw, too weak to work, conserving energy because movement requires calories they don't have. The hearth fire has gone out. They've burned all available wood and lack strength to gather more. The mother's milk has dried up. Malnutrition stops lactation. The infant she's nursing will die within days. She knows this, but continues cradling the child, unable to accept the inevitable. The father sits motionless, staring at nothing. He made the walk to town last week, hoping to find work for food. He found nothing. Thousands compete for any available work, and he's too weak to work anyway. Watch the village slowly die. Houses sit empty, their occupants dead or fled. Bodies lie unburied. The living lack strength to dig graves in frozen earth. Dogs and rats, themselves starving, feed on human corpses. The church bell no longer rings for deaths. There are too many, and the priest is dead himself. Disease follows famine. Typhus, dysentery, and pneumonia kill people whose immune systems are destroyed by malnutrition. The chroniclers report pestilence spreading, not the Black Death that will come in 1347, but the ordinary diseases that become deadly when populations are weakened by hunger. Spring 1316, no relief. April 1316 should bring hope. Spring, planting season, the cycle of renewal. Instead, it brings more rain. The fields remain too wet to plow. Farmers who survived winter lack seed grain. They ate it to survive. They lack draft animals. Oxen and horses died during winter or were slaughtered for meat. They lack strength to work. The planting that does occur is minimal and ineffective. Some regions plant nothing at all. The few seeds that go into the ground face the same conditions as 1315. Endless rain, cold temperatures, waterlogged soil. The second harvest will fail as completely as the first. Walk through a city, Paris, London, Bruges, and see urban famine. Cities depend on surrounding countryside for food. When rural harvests fail, cities starve. Urban authorities attempt to control distribution, setting up bread lines, rationing supplies. The crowds are enormous. Thousands queue for small loaves. Fights erupt. People are trampled. The city guards struggle to maintain order. The chronicler Jean de Venette writes, "The people were in such great need that it cannot be expressed. For the cries that were heard from the poor would move a heart of stone, as they lay in the streets with woe and great torment, swollen with hunger." 1317. The rain finally stops. Spring 1317 brings change. The rain lessens. Summer 1317 is drier. The weather, while not perfect, allows successful planting and growth. The 1317 harvest, while not abundant, is adequate. The famine's worst is over, but recovery is slow and painful. Walk through the countryside in late 1317 and see the devastation. Villages stand empty, their populations dead or scattered. Fields lie uncultivated. There are no farmers to work them, no animals to plow them, no seed to plant them. The land returns to wilderness. The survivors are scarred, physically weakened, psychologically traumatized, economically destroyed. They've witnessed humanity at its worst. They've done things to survive that haunt them. The social fabric requires years to repair. The toll. Counting the dead. Estimate the dead. Perhaps 10 to 25% of Northern Europe's population, millions of people across England, France, the Low Countries, Germany, Poland, and Scandinavia. Some regions suffered more, 30 to 40% mortality, while others escaped relatively lightly. Urban areas generally suffered more than rural areas despite seeming advantages. But the impact extends beyond immediate deaths. The population decline, the loss of livestock, the destruction of productive capacity mean Europe's economy is devastated. The growth and prosperity of the 13th century ends. The famines exposed how fragile medieval prosperity was, how dependent on stable climate, how vulnerable to disruption. Recovery takes decades. Population doesn't return to pre-famine levels until after 1400. The livestock herds require generations to rebuild. The social and psychological impacts linger. A generation grows up having witnessed horror, knowing that civilization's veneer is thin and easily stripped away. Conclusion: when systems fail. Stand in Europe in 1320 and see a continent transformed by catastrophe. The Great Famine killed millions through starvation, disease, and social collapse. But it also killed something less tangible: confidence in the medieval system, belief in authority's ability to protect its people, faith that God would provide. Understanding the Great Famine means understanding vulnerability, how entire civilizations depend on systems working, and what happens when they fail. Medieval Europe's agricultural system could support 70 million people in good conditions but collapsed immediately when conditions changed. There was no resilience, no backup, no safety net. It's also a reminder that climate change has consequences. The transition from medieval warm period to Little Ice Age, a relatively small temperature change, destroyed food production for 3 years and killed millions. The medieval world had no ability to adapt quickly to changed conditions. The Great Famine also foreshadows worse disaster. 30 years later, the Black Death will arrive, killing 40 to 60% of Europe's population. Historians debate whether the famine weakened populations, making them more vulnerable to plague. Regardless, the 14th century becomes the century of death, famine, plague, war, ending the medieval world, and birthing something new from catastrophe. Walk through Europe today, and you're walking where millions starved because it rained too much for 3 years. That's how fragile prosperity is, how dependent on factors beyond our control, and how quickly civilization can collapse when the systems supporting it fail. This was the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, 3 years when rain destroyed Europe's food supply, killed millions, and exposed the fragility of medieval civilization. If you found this sobering look at historical catastrophe compelling, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss where we're going next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the past.